Good afternoon and welcome to the Workforce Observer. We are very pleased to have with us today Tammy Browning. She's SVP and Group President, Enterprise Talent Management at Kelly. She leads a team of more than 1,500 people across the globe who connect people with work in myriad ways. A temp job at Kelly several years ago solidified her passion for connecting people to meaningful work, and she is well known both for her leadership and skill in operational excellence. I'm very excited to have her on the show. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you, Subadhra. I'm excited to be here.
You spent over 2 decades in the workforce solutions industry, right? You've witnessed major shifts in how work gets done. Let's talk about 2 trends that kind of stand out for you.
Well, Subadhra, yes, I have spent 2 decades, so thank you for reminding me of that. I started very young and youthful in my career. And, I would tell you that there's been so many things that have changed in our industry. But really, it's been this last handful of years that we've seen this significant shift in how we work as an industry. And so I think first and foremost, if I'm really being honest, about 5 years ago, this notion of digital transformation within the ecosystem of technology and what that meant to everybody, I think the shift, you can't go a single meeting in our industry now without talking about AI and the impacts of AI of business. What the platforms are doing to the business in terms of talent and talent fluidity and how talent wants to work. But we've really just redefined roles and the ways by which people want to work, and we're using technology way more than we ever have. And I think that the second one is just this shift of talent pooling. Now, we've always been in our industry very focused on pipelining and building talent for the future and being prepared for our clients' needs. But the truth be told, this is a very different kind of talent pool. This is talent for the future. This is about upskilling, reskilling, and think things like direct sourcing, where the talent is curated and managed in a very different way. It's embraced to want to join a company when a company is ready for that talent to join them. And so we as an industry leaders have to be prepared for not just how technology has changed the way we're working, but how we use those talent ecosystems in a very different way and how the recruiting organization interfaces with that.
Something that you said kind of put me in mind. I've been hearing from experts that there's a pool of talent, right? And everyone in the industry, the staffing companies, the MSPs, it doesn't matter what recruiting model you have, you're going after the same talent, correct? Has that changed? Has it been, is it better now? Or I don't know if better is the right word, or is it still the same? It's just that the recruiting models are different.
I think it's just the recruiting models are different. I think when you think about the talent themselves, of course, there's going to be some nuances, depending on the type of talent. So think, maybe a very niche particular type of talent, somebody in a role that's very sought after or very hard to find may only be in a handful of talent pools because it's very bespoke to their background. But by and large, talent today is going to go where the jobs are. And that is true, and it will remain true. If an organization has jobs available that talent believes that they can find success with it, they will be in multiple pools. I do think there's an element, though, of curation that's very different, and how you keep that talent engaged and how you keep them closer to why they would want to work for your organization or potentially for the organizations that we represent. Because often in a talent pooling situation, we're supporting many clients with that same pool. So how do we keep that talent really apprised of all the things that are available to them? And I think today more than ever, the uniqueness is the employee value proposition has changed so much in terms of what a person may see as a value to them may be very different today than it was, say, 5 years ago or even 6 months ago for that matter. So it's about curation and how we manage that pool today.
Thank you. You can't go 2 steps without talking about AI, right? So with technologies like AI, automation, reshaping roles, what skills do you believe will be most critical for workers, I guess, to thrive? And how can companies support talent development in this landscape? Because I know you said somewhere that Gen AI is transferring the future of work, transforming, but the most impactful innovations won't be the ones that replace people. They'll be the ones that recenter them. And I really like that line. It's a great line. So let's talk a little bit about the skills and then, what do companies have to do?
Well, I'm glad Subadhra, that you keep up on my blogs and on my posts on LinkedIn, because you're absolutely right. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that AI is a way to make people stronger. AI is a way to enhance somebody's skill sets. Now, I say that somewhat with caution, though, because to be fair, AI can be very dangerous in the wrong hands. So it's going to make the people that really prioritize their work in a way that is thoughtful and very, I don't know if I would say that they have to be more thorough, but they certainly need to make sure that what's coming out of the AI technology is what needs to be done from the work product perspective. But I think, to go back and answer your question, I think the skills that are most important today are actually that human-centric skill. It's really understanding critical thinking. It's having strong emotional intelligence. It's knowing when to speak up. It's knowing when to allow the AI to support a job or to enable a skill that you have. And it's knowing when you need to use good old-fashioned grit, your own skill without AI, that is going to be important. And I think, again, the caution that I have is that people are going to overuse it, and then they're going to lose their identity and what they're very good at themselves. So don't go too far down the path of prioritizing AI to do your complete job, because I actually think it's going to be a huge risk if we do that.
And what are companies doing? Because, when we talk about AI, it's not just skills that you need around AI. You also have to pay attention, like you said, to other skills, right? Like, what is your core? What do you bring to the table? If you're not a programmer, you're bringing other things to the table. So what are companies doing to support this whole, changing landscape, or companies like yours?
I think I'll speak for some of the ones that I've spoken to, and the concept of what are we doing to maybe change the worker's profile, perhaps upskilling and reskilling, or changing the game in terms of reframing the game of the worker's job. I can give a little bit of perspective around that, but I will tell you that because the technology is changing so rapidly, I think every corporation is in a little bit of a panic mode about the best possible approach to this. So think about software developers today. The latest study that you've seen, I'm sure you've read the same thing, 27 to 30% of software developers, now their work is being done by AI. So what are corporations doing? Are they intending to lay off 30% of their workforce? I don't think so. I don't think that's the plan. The plan is, what can we do with that software developer to move them into other areas that are going to create the future of that corporation? Things like innovation, thinking outside the box, perhaps in other technology arenas, looking at what skills they have in that software development that may be transferable into R&D and or engineering. So I think it's about understanding the transferable skills that every person has, and then also this notion of maybe you can build the talent for the future if you use the talent you currently have today. So I'm hopeful that every corporation isn't just going to lay off that workforce that doesn't maybe fit for today, that they're going to create the jobs of the future for what that might look like. And frankly, I think it's changing so rapidly that it's going to be challenging to understand what exactly those jobs are, because I don't think anyone has a crystal ball on what that's going to look like, to be honest.
Sure. That is true. Thank you. The concept of total talent management, is it gaining traction? I hear very different things from the people I speak to. And also, how can, companies effectively integrate the whole spectrum of workers, full-time, contingent, gig workers, to build, I guess, workforces, what we need for today and also the future. Yeah. The word agile and total talent is, thrown in a lot, but really, where are we?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that if you ask 10 people what total talent management means, you're going to get 10 answers, right? That means something different to every corporation. And yes, we are seeing it gain traction, and we're seeing it gain traction specifically from a contingent labor perspective. So think of temporary labor and outsourced full-time labor. So recruitment process and outsourcing. So we're seeing the convergence of that type of model, where a company maybe has an MSP and they want to bring in the same provider to complete their RPO. And maybe that's step one for them. And then they look at the whole entire ecosystem of their talent landscape. So think of all the ways by which an independent contractor might come through, or a full-time worker comes through. It's really about connecting the dots. And this is where I think it's so important. I think total talent management is more about the data the analytics and the insights that come with understanding total talent. So total talent isn't about actually placing that worker. So it's about being able to provide the data that was required for that worker to be placed. So what door did they come through? How did they get there? How are they onboarded? Are they being managed effectively? Do we know who they are? Is a big deal, right? Do we even know we have contingent workers? So I think it's more about, can you help us understand where we have talent and how our organization behaves? That's the step we're at right now.
Okay.
I believe in the coming year or two, with the advancement of the technologies that we previously talked about, that ability to be far more forward thinking, predictive, and look at how to bring total talent to life is really, we're on just the brink of that unleashing in a very big way. And it's going to be all of the ways by which the partners that are chosen are bringing their own technology platforms to the table to help that visualize and come to life for every corporation that we are or they are working with.
Cool. Explain to me, and I've always kind of, been interested in this, the tie-in between services procurement and total talent management. I get thrown off myself about what is services procurement? And you get 100 different, answers around this. But what is the tie-in? First, let's talk about what it is and what's the tie-in with total talent management.
Yeah. So first off, I'm going to answer your question because I like to think that I have a pretty good answer around what services procurement is in the landscape of an industry like mine, which is outcome-based human capital management, workforce planning, workforce management, MSP. And really, statement of work is a way by which to engage a worker, and think of it as a worker itself, and sometimes more than one worker, on something other than a contingent job. So by the way, it could in fact be temporary or contingent, but it's not coming through the door as a temporary worker. It's coming through the door on a contract or some type of statement of work, hence why it's called services procurement. And so oftentimes that talent is truly just time and materials workers that are coming through the door in a temporary way or in a short-term way, no different than temporary labor. But their engagement by which they're onboarded is different in that they do not have the same restriction and or rules that are often applied in the temporary labor space. So in temporary labor, you're accountable for things like tenure policy, rate cards, speed, cost, in services procurement. I think where they converge is that workforce often is temporary labor too, without the same rules of engagement. And so where we come in as an organization to come in and manage that is to mitigate risk and to bring an organization along the journey of where that talent is to meet them where they're at, and then create the same way that you do in the temporary labor space, put some engagement around that so that you have a governance model to embrace that talent effectively. You know who the suppliers are, you know what you're paying for, you know why you're paying for it. But I think it ties back to the earlier comment is what work is being done and what is the data telling you about temporary labor and your services procurement labor, and be able to bring that to life in one way. What we often find in every major corporation that we work with is we're looking at the data. A lot of times that talent in most cases is a temporary worker that's just come through the door in a different way. Now,
so sorry, before I lose that train of thought, is a procurement, a worker who comes in through the SOW door, is it a different type of worker than the worker who comes in through the contingent worker door?
Not always.
I mean,
not always. In fact, oftentimes you'll see the same supply chain. So oftentimes when you're looking at your the suppliers that you use in your contingent labor strategies often are in fact the same suppliers that are in your services procurement strategy. And in fact, sometimes you can even tie back the data to show you the worker themselves, the temporary worker that was placed yesterday was a temporary worker through your programming, today is on a statement of work. Now that's a handful of the population. Now there's also true outcome-based services procurement, where the corporation is coming in, they're scoping your work, they're looking at outbound, deliverables, they're held accountable. And then we also manage that work too. So that's also under the umbrella of total talent management. The true statement of work business that we're seeing, that's more vendor-based. What we see is contingent labor is more time and material. So it's just unique and different. That's why it's so important, I think, to pull all statement of work, whether it's vendor-based or temporary labor, under one management structure, so you know exactly how your organization behaves and how you hire people.
And I guess the data tells the story, so everyone knows where they're at. Okay, that's great. Thank you. So much is being said about SOW agreements, right? Being a growing focus for buyers. I think it's important to have some best practices that organizations can adopt to optimize SOW engagements. And I know this is a huge topic, so I don't expect you to spend the next 10 minutes talking about it, but just easy best practices that come to mind.
Well, first off, I think it's clarity. So first off, what are the rules of engagement for your corporation? That's step one. What is your vision for how talent enters the door that's third party? So any third party labor, what is your vision for that as a corporation? And what is it that you're trying to accomplish in the work that needs to be done? Is it that you want all of your services procurement to have a deliverable and an outcome base, in which case you would want to build a governance strategy that gives you that. So you'd want to know what your KPIs and your SLAs are in every agreement. You want to be able to digitize. I would highly encourage every major corporation to look at technology that can digitize every document you have from a vendor or an individual. And the reason for that is you'd be shocked. Some of the biggest and best corporations in the world still have agreements sitting in the desk drawer of hiring managers today. So understanding who you have, why they're working, what they're doing, and the way that you're engaging them, I think is really important. And then, I think to keep it simple, there's a lot of corporations now that you cannot even get through their onboarding cycle, meaning you can't go through the provisioning of onboarding of technology or any kind without going through some type of channel. I highly encourage, if companies don't have a way by which they're onboarding third-party labor, that they require it as a mandate, that there's a front door for all ways by which people gain access to their systems, tools, and their technology. And it's going to keep them in compliance far better than they would if they allow just, the P card transaction to occur between a supplier and a hiring manager.
Cool. Another big question, the future of the MSP. What does that look like? I've been hearing words like, we're shifting from vendor management to talent experience management. Not even sure what that means, but let's have your thoughts on it.
Let me know if you find out. I will say, what is the future of the MSP is so... it has changed significantly. And, I was told many years ago, I'll share a bit of an antidote. I was told many years ago as I was building technology for, as a storefront, I'm very passionate that the MSP is really a storefront, for any way by which a talent needs to go through a corporation's door. And so I did a lot to build user interface and user experience platforms to make it a whole heck of a lot easier for hiring managers to engage the talent that they need to put to work. And my corporation, I'll remember at the time, in fact, I was chatting with my CFO who said to me, we're not an IT company, we're not a software provider. And I said, well, we're going to become one really quick, because as an MSP, if you're not bringing your own talent strategy and your own technology to the table to manage the workforce and provide the data, the analytics, and the insights, then the corporation is going to be behind, because I assure you, if they had the ability to do it and they had the technology to do it, they would be doing it. So I do think that the future of the MSP is far more consultative, far more engaged. A embedded technology is what I like to call it, is embedded in the organization and bringing their own suite of tools to the table to help the user experience in a far better way. And they're able to really explain to a corporation using both the rear view mirror of data and the future data using AI and genetic, all the other ways by which you can look at potentially the future data and the skills talent that we're going to need. It's going to be a mandatory expectation for every MSP. Gone are the days of just turning on a VMS. That is not going to be the case anymore.
Cool. From your perspective, because you talk to so many clients, you're handling clients as well, and have been. What are the most common problems organizations are facing when they're managing their contingent labor programs? And it's something which I've been wanting to ask, is there still that stigma around contingent work that there used to be?
Subadhra, it is, it's my passion and my vision to have changed the stigma. of being a temporary worker. I've been in the business for 25 years. You read my bio. I actually started as a temporary worker, coming through a Kelly, who was the pioneer and founded the industry. To me, our noble purpose is we find work for people in ways that enrich our lives. And I firmly believe that, but I don't think we just do it in this industry to enrich the people, the temporary workers' lives that we change, but also our own lives. All of us that choose to be in this industry, we're all in this, very philanthropic and very heartfelt career where we have a purpose, and that is helping people find work. And so to the extent that everyone in the industry can tie back to telling our story about how powerful, it is to place a worker on an assignment and the joy that comes from that, I think the stigma would be quickly removed. But it is a challenge. And I think from a staffing perspective, some of the biggest, things that I believe that we're going to face are the current environment today. I mean, we can't have a conversation without talking about the current environment. It's this ever changing dynamic. Think of, the tariffs that we're facing today that are changing, the supply chain and how people come through the door. It's bringing work back here to the U.S.
Yes.
What that's going to mean for, manufacturing and how, whether that's going to speed up the need for workers. It's the displacing of AI and what we do with that workforce. It's going to be displaced and how we upskill and reskill the future talent. I think we have more today in terms of challenges that we're facing than this industry has ever felt in such a significant pace by which we're dealing with it. And that doesn't, count for all of the other things that we've been thrown at over the last 5 years between a pandemic and a trade war and a global wars and all the other things that go with that. I think as a business leader, as an executive, as a CEO potentially for other corporations that are dealing with this as they're in their C-suites trying to figure out how to solve these problems, it is absolutely going to require an investment in the talent, going back to that emotional intelligence, getting our people really prepared to handle all of these changes, creating a good, solid cultural alignment, because the staffing industry is really about its people. It's our differentiation. And so understanding everyone you bring in is aligned to your culture, and try to create this creative environment where your talent can help you solve some of these challenges that we're all facing. Because I don't think one person has the answer. I think we're going to be stronger together, to be honest.
So if I had to say, and what is the one thing that we all need to do to ensure that this industry is elevated, not just the industry, not just the staffing firms, but even the buyers, what would you say it was?
You know what I think it is? There's two things. One, there's a handful of things that we experience in our industry, and that is that in most corporations, the contingent labor population and the suppliers that are embracing that and providing the talent are not always at the table. And in fact, I think what's so important is when you think about most major corporations today, the third-party labor population is larger than their full-time staff. Bring these providers to the table, help them help you, because ultimately the corporation that you're servicing or they're working for, that talent is eventually going to become full-time. They're going to work for a corporation. They're going to be either hired or they're going to be converted. So think about the temporary labor when you're thinking about all the ways by which your corporation can grow and explore. And then the other thing is, as your partners, as your vendors, I often sometimes think that there's this strategy to set it and forget it. And what I mean by that is you choose your partner and then you just hand it over to them to just go do for you. The best corporations bring their partners to the table, and there is a strategy for attracting, retaining, and managing the best workforce. And they don't walk away. They're at the table for innovation, for thought leadership, for driving the uniqueness within their own company. And so really bring that provider, the vendor, whoever it is that you're embracing, whether it's for temporary labor or full-time labor, into your strategy for the future so that you can both be set up for success. Because frankly, the talent deserves it that's going to come work for you, and you're going to be far better off as a corporation when you're making those decisions that way.
And at the staffing industry's end, what should they be doing? Because, they have myriad challenges, margin pressure, talent shortages. I mean, it can go on. And it's been a tough 2 years, I know, for the industry. So what would you recommend the industry do? Or even what is your approach? Without giving away your secrets, but
well, I think when you're thinking about what we should do as companies in this space, you hit it on the head. We're in a very challenging time. Our industry has been in a recession for the better part of 2.5 years. And we're all scratching our heads wondering why, because by and large, we're not in a recession in any other industry. The quit rates are very low. And so job replacement is very slow. We're looking at turnover tenure, turnover's at an all-time low. And you're looking at the average tenure of a worker is much, much longer than it used to be. And so what can staffing agencies do? And I think it really stems and starts with understanding their vision, what they're trying to accomplish, how you use the data to tell your story, how you use the data to explain to a corporation why third-party labor is sometimes better than full-time labor. And then looking at how can you produce more? So how do you become more sticky, whether that be through offering services procurement. So looking at how you can become an outcome-based service provider. Not that, again, that pure play, find a job order and place a worker. It's not that easy anymore. You have to be far more nimble, far more progressive, and you have to use the technology and the tools to help you get through the door. And I think that's the only way we're going to be successful is when you're looking at the full ecosystem. And frankly, every staffing company that's bringing more to the table, you're far more sticky with those clients that you're representing every day because there's just providing so much more value than just placing a worker one at a time.
Thank you. In your tenure in the industry, anything that has really surprised you, any development or any shift, you'd be like, wow, I didn't see that. Or you saw it and you were still surprised?
I don't know. When I look at our industry, I'm surprised every day. This is, I used to say back in the day that I learned something new every single day. And I think the beauty of our industry is that we touch and have the ability to learn about every other industry. So we become very informed about what's happening in the world of work. I think if I had to say what I'm surprised by is that most of us don't take advantage of all of that knowledge we had to be far more progressive in our thought leadership. We have way more opportunity to educate industries, people, the workforce, the talent, the upcoming talent about the future of work than we're given credit. And I just think we need to be shouting from the rooftops. I'm a little surprised that we don't take all that knowledge that we have and just make it come to life. But there's one other thing that I will say is I don't know if it surprises me or it makes me proud. I believe that we will never take the recruiting out of recruiting. So any company that is out there thinking they can digitally transform all ways by which you recruit, I think you're in for a rude awakening. There's the human element in our business that will never go away. It's that emotional intelligence that I talked about earlier. There's the need to attract and retain. I think we've over-engineered right now this use of AI. And it's surprising me that the corporations and the industry isn't realizing that the talent is often our recruiters and the people that are out there every day are the ones attracting those people to your company. They're talking them into jobs. They're giving them the value prop. They're explaining your company. They're doing all those things that get people excited about wanting to work for you. And no AI, no chatbot, nothing can get a candidate excited about working for your company. So those are the things that surprise me, that we think we can just automate everything. And I assure you, I don't think that we can. So I'm going to stay firm that you can't take recruiting out of recruiting.
Love that. Any last piece of advice for this audience, both buyers as well as staffing suppliers?
I think I think just stay the course. Everybody wants to, during a time of uncertainty, when the economy is really rough or when there are unknown futures. I do believe that when you have a vision and you have a path forward, that you do have to change, you do have to work in a different way, and you need to understand your path, but never go away from your core. Because if your core is that you have a good plan and a good strategy, the economy is going to come back around, the job pool is going to come back around, and don't let it pass you by because you pivoted too quickly. So just make sure that your strategy is rock solid. That's my only advice. Sometimes I think we tend to want to, during bad times, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I just don't think that's the right messaging at this point.
Great advice. Tammy Browning, thank you so much for your insights. It's a pleasure having you.
Thanks, Subadhra. I look forward to doing future podcasts with you as you build the brand of how we change the stigma in the industry. I love that.
Thank you.